Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
10, 9, 8, and I'm breaking away. I'm all dressed up and ready to play. 7, 6, 5, 4, and I'm over you. Counting 3.
Today is a special video, doing it on demand for some individuals who asked me to give them a quick demo on how to use Bondo. First of all, we'll go over the basic ingredients, what you're going to need. Obviously, body filler, which is also known as Bondo, cream hardener, the surface in which you're going to work with the Bondo, a mixing palette. In this case, it's an old chunk of plastic with a couple of mixing spoons there to stir it all up. And then, of course, your finishing products, your sander, mouse sander, and sandpaper. So let's get to work. Let's first start off on mixing the actual Bondo and cream hardener. This is going to differ from person to person, of course. This is how I do it, and I find that I get a great result every time. So first, upon opening the fresh can of Bondo mix, you're going to notice that you might have to stir it up just a little bit. You see all that cloud that's happening in there? That's the result of a not very well mixed can. So simply by taking a stick of any kind, I just use a simple strip of plastic, just get in there, mix that all up until you get a nice gray color, as you can see underneath where it's sort of more settled in. Mix that all up really good before you actually take anything out. Once you've taken a good dollop size out of the can and place it onto your mixing board, you can see here it's a little bit hard. It's probably because it's the outside temperature. It's a little cool here in the shop right now. Yours will probably come out a lot more runny, probably more of a milkshake texture, but that doesn't matter. It's going to work either way. Once you have a little bit set up onto your mixing tray, you're going to take a little bit of the cream hardener. Now the rule of thumb is that for a golf ball size of the actual gray putty, you're going to add about a pea-sized dollop of cream hardener. And you can mix that up a little bit on the tube if it comes out a little bit runny. Don't be afraid of that. It sometimes happens, especially when there's a lot of condensation or low temperatures on the outside like I'm working on in my shop here. There we go, nice creamy red, about a pea size, like so. The cat back on that there. You'll also find that there is a little bit of fume with this. It's not bad, but again, working in a ventilated area is always a good idea. And what you're going to do is essentially work the hardener right into the putty itself. You'll know you'll have the hardener worked into the putty and on an even basis is when your putty starts to turn almost a skin tone or a little bit darker. A salmon pink is usually pretty good. Once you have it to this point, it's ready to be spread on to whatever surface you're using. So whether it's a pep file, if it's Sintra, foam, whatever it is that you're going to use, but you're going to apply it in very thin coats. You don't want to ever take the entire thing and slap it on and then smooth it around. Working in thin coats is usually better. You have more control over it. So once it gets to this nice pink color, and I don't know if you can see it very well, but from my point it's a very light salmon pink. I'm going to take that and then I can start applying it to certain areas on the mask that I'm going to do. So really simply, again, if you have a mixing stick, or if you have a silicone spreader that you can get like a Canadian Tire, they come in 3 different shapes. All you're going to do is just take it and spread it ever so thinly on whatever surface that you're working on. It's almost like icing a cake. That's the best way I can describe how much to put on at any given time. So once you have that, and you've worked in your area, now you got about 5 to 7 minutes of working time to spread this stuff on, depending on how much hardener you actually mix in. I can gauge by time how much time I have to work by how pink the resulting mixture is. If it's a really if it's a really light salmon pink, then I've got about 5 to 7 minutes of working time before it starts to harden. If it's darker than that, if it's you know, like almost like a pinkish purple sort of color, then I've got significantly less, probably about 2 or 3 minutes given. And once you have it all spread on into the layers that you need, and you got it sort of at a manageable point, because you're going to be building up on this no matter what. And once you've got a layer down there and it's pretty nice and smooth, going to use up as much of the Bondo as you can all over the surface and let it dry. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes and we'll see where we're at there as far as the curing time is concerned, and we should be ready to sand. So here we are after about 20 minutes, give or take. The Bondo has set up. It's fairly rigid. There is no more heat coming from it, and that's usually a pretty good indicator that it's finally cured. Bondo and the hardener does have a chemical reaction similar to what the resin fiberglass and fiberglass hardener does. So basically what it does is that it heats up, cools down, and solidifies. So once you don't feel any heat coming from your bondoed areas and it feels pretty rigid, almost like a rock, and it's not soft anywhere or anything like that, you should be good to go ahead to start sanding. Simple mouse sander will do, and what I've done is laid up here an 80 grit to start. What you want to do in sanding, and I'll just move this up here a little bit so you can see, a lot of the spreading and stuff that you do will have ridges. That's why I tell people to do it in thin coats, so you're not having to bust your hand off just trying to get rid of a lot of the burrs and stuff. And basically all you want to do is just smooth that out. If you find that you get pits and stuff like that, which does happen during sanding, it's not that big of a deal. A little bit of glazing putty goes a long way for that. I'd show you how to do the sanding, but that's pretty self-evident. It's not hard to do, and it's really difficult for me to do to show you as while I'm holding the camera at the same time. But basically, like I said, all you want to do, just get rid of all that stuff, smooth it off, round it off a little bit, get it nice and clean, and you should be good to go. If you find that you are getting bigger pits and crevices and stuff, you can mix up a small batch and go over top of the area that you sanded in. It's very much along the lines of like making a candle, where you're dipping the wick in and out and then smoothing everything off. There's not much different here. It's just being done with a mouse sander and 80 grit. Once you've got all the burrs and the ridges and everything looks smooth, you can go over it again with a 120. You can go right up to 200 with that if you really so desire. Depends on how smooth a surface you actually want without biting into the foam or the covering that you've got. And other than that, that's pretty much all there is to it. Bondo's pretty simple. It's not rocket scientist. It does take a little bit to get used to as far as the mixing's concerned, but after that, it's pretty much a done deal. So good luck. Let me know if you need any help or if you have any other questions, and I'll be sure to answer them.